Hi, welcome to the notes for H3-5. Today we're going to look at operations with radicals. In the lesson, we're going to focus on sums and differences. Tomorrow we'll start to look at multiplication and division involving radicals. Let's look at the beginning. It says, how do you simplify an expression that looks like this? 5x plus 3y minus 8x plus 2y. Okay, we've been in math long enough to know that we are just going to combine our like terms, right? We know that we have a positive 5x, a negative 8x, and then we've got a positive 3y and a positive 2y. So when we look to combine our like terms, we'll end up with 5x and a negative 8x will give us a negative 3x. And when we combine 3y and 2y, we have a total of 5y's. So our answer there we know is negative 3x plus 5y. We got that by combining like terms. Radicals are the same way. In order to simplify radical expressions, you must have like radicals. Okay, that means we're talking about radicals that have the same root values. Down below we have some examples. It says simplify each radical expression. So we have 5 radical 2 plus 2 radical 3 plus 3 radical 3 minus 4 radical 2. So as we look at these, we see that we have a 5 radical 2 and we have a negative 4 radical 2. And then we've got a couple sets of radical 3s. We have a positive 2 radical 3 and a positive 3 radical 3. So I've just highlighted the ones that we've got that are like terms. If you want, you could take them and reorder them. So we have 5 radical 2 minus 4 radical 2 plus 2 radical 3 plus 3 radical 3. So when we combine these now, when we look at this part, if I have 5 radical 2's and I'm taking away 4 radical 2's, that's going to leave me with just a single radical 2. And then if I've got 2 radical 3's and I'm adding 3 more, I'm going to end up with 5 radical 3's. So we're going to get radical 2 plus 5 radical 3. When we look at the next one, we see the square root of 2 plus the cube root of 2. And in this case here, if you think about it, if this was like 2 to the 1/2 power plus 2 to the 1/3 power, right? We can't combine those because they're not like terms. So this one, we can't do anything with it. It is already simplified. So the key thing to focus on there is we have different root values, which means these are not like terms. All right, let's move on. We've just got a few problems here to work through. When you feel good about it, you can move on. They're obviously going to progress in difficulty as we work through the lesson. So the first one, we have 2 radical 3 plus 5 plus 7 radical 3 minus 2. And when I'm looking at combining my like terms, I've got this 2 radical 3 and I have this 7 radical 3. So we've got 2 radical 3 plus 7 radical 3. And then we've got a plus 5 and a minus 2. We combine our like terms and we should have 9 radical 3 plus 3. The next one, we have 10 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2 plus 7 plus 6 radical 2. So on this one, we've got, 3 that have radical 2's in them, and then we just have a constant term. So as we think about it, 10, actually let's just do it like this. 10 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2 should give us 7 radical 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch my order and say plus 6 radical 2 plus 7. Now when I combine them, I've got 7 radical 2's plus 6 radical 2's is 13 radical 2 plus 7. And we can't combine the 7 and the 13 radical 2. They're not like terms. So that is our answer. Moving on. Number 3, we have 5 radical 6 minus 3 radical 24 plus radical 150. Our difference now here is we see that nothing right now appears to be like terms, but we want to take this and simplify it down. So Looking at our different terms, we have 5 radical 6. Well, radical 6 is already simplified. We have minus 3 times the square root of 24. Okay, so that one, we know that 24 can break down. So let's just do this over on the side. If I have 3 times the square root of 24, we know that 24 has a perfect square factor of 4. So this is like saying 3 times our 4 times our 6, or 3 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 6, which is 3 times 2 times the square root of 6, or 6 radical 6. So I'm going to bring down my 5 radical 6, and right now I have minus 6 radical 6. And then let's just take a second and simplify our square root of 150. Okay, so what perfect square goes into 150? Well, we know 25 should go into that. So we could call this the square root of 25 times 6. And the square root of 25 is 5, so that gives us 5 radical 6. Let's take that and bring it down here. So we have plus 5 times the square root of 6. And now we can just combine these together. 5 minus 6 is negative 1, plus 5 would be 4. So we should end up with 4 radical 6. Looking down below here, we've got 3 radical 27 minus 7 radical 3 minus radical 12. So it's pretty safe to say that we need to simplify this one, and we need to simplify this one. Our 7 radical 3 can't be simplified anymore. So 3 times the square root of 27, we know that the square root of 27 is like 9 times 3. So we're looking at 3 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 3, which is going to give us a total of 9 radical 3. We have minus 7 times the square root of 3, and then when we do our square root of 12, we know the square root of 12 is like the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, or 2 radical 3. So minus 2 radical 3. And now when we take this here and we combine our like terms, right, this is going to be 2 radical 3 minus a 2 radical 3, which is going to give us 0. So there is our answer for number 4. Number 5, okay, these ones aren't any different. These are just practice. So once you feel like you have it down, maybe pause the video, try them, then fast forward through to see if you get the correct answer. All right, so 5 and 6, we have 2 radical 20 minus 2 radical 45 plus 3 radical 80. I'm going to break down my 2 radical 20 first. I know that 2 radical 20 is going to look like 2 radical 4 times radical 5, which is 2 times 2 times radical 5, or 4 radical 5. So I've got 4 radical 5 here. When I have a negative 2 radical 45, we know that 9 is the perfect square there. So we have negative 2 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 5, or negative 2 times 3 times radical 5. And that gives us minus 6 radical 5. And then when we do 3 times the square root of 80, okay, if you need to break 80 down, go ahead and do it. Okay, so I know that the biggest perfect square that I could find in 80 would be 16. So I'm going to do 3 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 5. You break it down however you need to break it down to get to your answer, but it should be 3 times 4 times the square root of 5, or 12 times the square root of 5. And now we're just going to combine the like terms. So we're going to have a negative 2 radical 5 after I combine those two. And then when I add 12 radical 5 to it, I will get 10 radical 5. Number 6, 2 radical 12 minus 3 radical 27 plus 2 radical 48. So let's just go ahead there and simplify those. Square root of 12 is like the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, or 2 times 2 times radical 3, which is 4 radical 3. We've got a negative 3 times the square root of 27. I think we already broke down the square root of 27, right? It was like the square root of 9 times the square root of 3, or I think we end up with negative 9 radical 3. And then 2 times square root of 48. If we try to take that one and break it down, I'm going to do that one actually on the left side because I think I'm out of room over there. Okay, what number goes into 48? Well, 16 goes into 48 3 times. So we have 2 times 4 times the square root of 3, which is going to be 8 radical 3. And now we're just going to combine our like terms. So 4 minus 9 is negative 5 radical 3. Plus 8 radical 3 is going to give us a 3 radical 3 in the end. Let's move on. Now we've got number 7 and 8. So I believe these are the last ones. Okay, with these ones, let's just take our time, go through and do them, see if you get the right answer. I'm going to start out with 3 radical 45. So when we break that apart, that's 3 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 5, or 3 times the square root of 5. So we get 9 radical 5. Negative 5 times the square root of 80. Well, we just did 80, right? We said that that was the square root of 16 times 5. So negative 5 times 4 times the square root of 5 is going to give us a negative 20 radical 5. And then we've got our 4 times the square root of 20, another one that we've already done. 4 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, which is going to be 4 times 2 times the square root of 5, which is 8 times the square root of 5. Combine your like terms. This is going to be a negative 11 radical 5 plus an 8 radical 5, which is going to give us a negative 3 radical 5. Okay, so plenty of practice ones there for you. Hopefully it's feeling good, breaking them down. Notice I show a lot of work, right? Because I don't like making mistakes there. The issues that usually come up are when people try to, do too many steps at once. So go ahead, take your time and do the work that you need to do to make sure you're getting them correct. Okay, I said you didn't have to do all of these. You do the ones you needed to do to make sure you understand it, and then move on. All right, last one here might be a little different though, so you may want to pay attention to this one. We have 3 times the square root of 8x to the third plus 5x times the square root of 32x minus 4 times the square root of 18x to the fourth. So we're going to need to take each of these radicals and break them down, or the square root of 8x to the third. Okay, we're going to need to make sure we break this one down, and we're going to need to make sure we break down that one. So let's do it here. If I'm going to break down, if I have 3 times the square root of 8x to the third, right, we know that that should end up being, let's see here, let's just leave our 3 out there, and we've got the square root of 8 times the square root of x to the third. Well, the square root of 8 we know is 4 and 2, so that should be a 2 radical 2. Square root of x to the third we know is x squared times x, so that should be an x radical x. And when we put that all together, that should be 6x radical 2x. Next one, we've got our 5x times the square root of 32x. So with this one here, I've got my 5x out here already, but let's do the square root of 32. And then we'll have the square root of x. So we know that that x is going to be left in there. 32 is like 16 times 2, so that's going to break down into 4 radical 2. Okay, you know how to do those. I'm not showing all the steps on that because I know you get tired of watching me do every single step. So I already did it, but when you do your work, you should end up with that. So when we put all this together, 5x times 4 is going to be 20x. And then we're going to have times the square root of 2x. And then the last one there, we have that negative 4 times the square root of 18x to the fourth. Let's just take our time, break that one apart. So we have negative 4 times the square root of 18 times the square root of x to the fourth. Well, negative 4 isn't going to change, and we've got our square root of 18. We know that's 9 times 2, so that should be times 3 radical 2. And then the square root of x to the fourth we know is going to be just x squared. We'll take those, combine those together. We should have negative 4 times 3 times x squared, which would be negative 12x squared. And then we have just a radical 2 left over. As we look at this expression, right, we have this one and this one are like terms. Our third term is not the same, right? It's just a radical 2 in there. So when we take it and we combine these, 6x plus 20x is going to give us 26x. And then we have radical 2x still. And then we're going to bring down our minus 12x squared radical 2. And that's as far as we can go. That is our final answer. All right, so if you have questions about these, please make sure you reach out to your teacher and ask. Remember, we're just combining the like terms, but sometimes you need to simplify your radical to see if you have like terms. Thanks for watching.